Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Nicole, and I'm a data school consultant at the Information Lab. At the 2020 Tableau conference, it was announced that Salesforce is bringing Einstein Analytics and Tableau together to form the Tableau CRM. As a result, many people who have been using one or the other software are wondering what the similarities and differences are between these two products. Although Einstein Analytics will soon be known as the Tableau CRM, to avoid confusion between the two Tableaus, I will be referring to it as Einstein Analytics throughout this session. My colleague Tom Prowse has already created a video about the similarities and differences when it comes to data preparation in these two softwares. And if you're curious to learn more, then you can find his video on the Information Lab's YouTube page. Moving on from data preparation, today we will be focusing on creating interactive dashboards to drive business decisions. I will show you how to create graphs in the two softwares, and we will be putting together a dashboard to analyze sales data in both Einstein Analytics and Tableau. We will also look at how to add interactivity with things such as tooltips and filters. And finally, we will also talk about how you can share your work with others. We will of course not be able to go into all the detail in 40 minutes. However, I hope that by the end of the sessions, you will have a good idea of the most important areas where Tableau Desktop and Einstein Analytics are similar and also where they differ. Just like you, I am on a learning journey. I come from a Tableau background and have recently been teaching myself Einstein Analytics. So feel free to leave me comments with any other similarities or differences between the two softwares that you can think of. Both Tableau Desktop and Einstein Analytics are self-service data visualization tools, which enable the user to make sense of large amounts of data. And they encourage dashboard interactivity and on-demand analysis. Einstein is part of the customer relationship management tool Salesforce and is its tool for analyzing data. As such, Einstein Analytics is fully integrated into Salesforce and does not offer an on-premise option. This is one of the biggest differences between Einstein Analytics and Tableau Desktop. Whereas Einstein Analytics is accessed through Salesforce on your browser, Tableau Desktop is an application on your computer. Being part of Salesforce, Einstein is optimized for use with Salesforce data and offers a few other connection options. Tableau, on the other hand, can connect to many more data sources, different file types, and databases. The drawback here is that Tableau is not optimized for Salesforce data, and even though it can access Salesforce data, there are still some minor issues with it. So for example, calculated fields from Salesforce do not get pulled through into Tableau. Another important difference between the two softwares is that Einstein has extensive machine learning features, including things such as allowing the user to determine the next best action, build predictions, use natural language processing, and even exploit image classification capabilities. Tableau also has some forecasting functionalities, but these are limited compared to Einstein's. We could spend a whole session just on predictive and machine learning features, so we're not going to delve into these today. But with the Tableau CRM being rolled out, it looks like some of Einstein's predictive features will be accessible through Tableau in the near future. Now let's build out a dashboard in both Tableau and Einstein to analyze the profits of the fruit and root grocery chain. So in Tableau, let me connect to my data set. And I'm immediately greeted with a preview of the data. Now, in order to start building a graph, I can click on Sheet. And on the left-hand side, you can see all the columns in our data set, called fields in Tableau, divided by a faint gray line. Above this gray line are my dimensions, which are qualitative values that I might want to group my data by. And under the line are the measures. These are quantitative values, such as profit, that I might want to aggregate by calculating, for example, sums or averages and so on. The way to build charts in Tableau is by dragging and dropping these fields. So let's start by building a simple bar chart. In my fruit and root grocery analysis, I'm interested in knowing the profit by category. So what I can do is just drag and drop category onto columns. And this is not very legible, so let me just toggle to entire view. And then I can bring my profit to rows. And as you can see, this defaults to the sum of profit, which I'm happy with. But if I wanted to, I could change it to average, median, and so on. Our bar chart is ready. I'm just going to do some formatting. So I want to make the bars just a tiny bit narrower. And then instead of this y-axis, I'd like to label the columns by the profit. So what I can do is drag the profit again onto the label shelf. And let's just format this so that the numbers are a currency. My fruit and root grocery chain is in Europe, so I'm just going to choose a country in Europe. So we get euros. And then let's diminish the number of decimal places and display it in units of thousands. And what I can do now is right click on the axis and untick show header. And then just a bit more cleaning up. So if I right click, I can format my sheet. And there are these faint grid lines, which if I just add them back in and then remove them, they disappear. And then finally, I just like to sort the bars in descending order by clicking on this little button here. And we have our first graph. Let me rename the sheet by right-clicking and calling it bar. And now let's make a line chart. What I'm going to do is just create a new sheet. And what I'd like to do is know how the profit has changed by quarter since the grocery chain opened. So I'm going to drag and drop my order date onto columns. And then instead of discrete year, we want it to be continuous quarter. And then I'm going to take my profit and drop it onto rows. And as you can see, it has again defaulted to the sum of profit, which is good. And it has automatically defaulted to a line chart, which I'm happy with. But if I wanted to change it to a bar chart or something else, I could just choose a different chart type here. And now let's rename the sheet to line. And that's it. In a few simple clicks, we have built two charts. And before going on to the next chart, let's hop over into Einstein and do the same there. The way that Einstein is organized is by applications. So if I look at my apps, I've already created an app called Fruit and Root Groceries. And inside this app, I have already preloaded a data set, Fruit and Root Groceries. In order to start analyzing this data, all I need to do is click on the data set and it will create a lens. So let's go ahead and build our column chart. So first of all, I'll choose the right chart type for me. So that's column. And then we want the different bars to be our categories. And the bar length, which is currently count of rows, we want that to be sum of profit. As you can see, one of the differences between Tableau and Einstein is that where Tableau uses mainly drag and drop, Einstein tends to use pick lists. A similarity, though, is that both Tableau and Einstein use the concept of dimensions and measures. So you can see, for example, that if I do sum, Einstein only gives me measures to choose from because you can only sum over measures. But if I were to, for example, want to do unique, then I can choose dimensions or measures. Anyways, so let's go back to sum of profit. In order to sort by the profit, all we need to do is click on the header of the y-axis. And Einstein has already inserted labels for the amount of profit that each column represents. But what we want to do now is slightly change its format. So we can click on the little arrow by sum of profit and format the numbers to be a rounded currency. And this pre-populates our format. And then we want to just customize this slightly. by adding euros. And there we go. Now we want to just further change the formatting of this a bit. So on the y-axis, we don't need to show the axis. And this legend over here, let's get rid of it. And this is pretty good already. So let's go ahead and save the lens. And I'm going to save this lens as part of my fruit and root groceries application. And I'll just call it bar. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create another lens. And this time we want to make a line chart. So I'm going to choose line. And on the x-axis, we want our order date. And again, we want to pick continuous quarters like we did before. And on the y-axis, we want the sum of profit. And again, we can play around with the formatting and remove the two axes. And the legend as well. And again, let's go ahead and save this lens in fruit and root groceries, and I'll call it line. So we now have a bar and line graph in both Tableau and Einstein. So let's jump back into Tableau and see where fruit and root groceries is making its profit. For this, we are going to use the country region field. And as you can see by the little globe icon next to it, Tableau has recognized it as a geographic field type. So all we need to do is double click the field and we get a dot for each of the countries. Now I'm going to change the chart type to a filled map, and I want to color this map by the sum of profit. And as you can see from the color legend, negative profits where the company lost money are orange, and positive profits are blue. But Fruit and Roots Groceries likes to use its brand colors. So with their logo open on my second screen, I am simply going to pick the colors from their logo. So the red and the blue. And I'd like to use the full color range. And we can immediately see that the Netherlands have the lowest profit. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit by scrolling on my mouse, just to make the countries a bit more visible. And then we can pan over a bit. And I'd say that's pretty good. I'll just name the sheet. And let's jump back into Einstein now. In a new lens, I'm going to change the chart type to map. And Einstein is telling me that it needs a location in order to create a map. So under location, let's give it the country region. And just like in Tableau, Einstein has recognized that these countries are indeed geographic entities. Our color is again going to be the sum of profit. And then let's format the map. So first of all, I find that this map is very zoomed out. Unfortunately, we cannot zoom in and out at will in Einstein, but we can enable auto zoom. And this already helps a bit. And we can choose Europe to zoom in a bit more. In terms of the colors, I really liked how Tableau defaults to a diverging color palette. And as far as I know, there's no way to use a diverging color palette in Einstein, but we can manually create one. So under conditional formatting, we can choose to format by the sum of profit. And let's try to use the gradient option. So in the gradient option, I'm just going to choose a red and a blue. But the problem with this is that the color scale is not centered at 0. So for example, it looks like Belgium has a negative profit because it is red, but in reality, its profit is positive. So this doesn't really work. To solve this, we can use bins instead. Let's color everything below 20,000 a dark red. And this way I can manually set different colors for above 0 and below 0. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but I'm copying and pasting the hex codes of the red from the logo into the text box. Then between 20,000 and 0, can be slightly lighter. Maybe something like this. And so on. I made 4 bins just to save time, but in theory, you could make more bins for a smoother transition between the colors. And finally, let's hide the legend and save our lens. And let's hop back into Tableau. Now that we have 3 graphs ready, we're in a good position to start creating a dashboard. So let me click on the little Add Dashboard icon, and Tableau creates an empty dashboard. We have the option to resize the dashboard if we want, but for now, let's stick with the size as it is. All we need to do to create a dashboard is to drag and drop our sheets onto the dashboard. So for example, I will start by bringing in the map. And let me get rid of the color legend. And next to it, I will bring in a container object. Containers exist in both Einstein and Tableau, so I think most people here will be familiar with them. Inside the container, I can drag in the bar chart and the line chart just below the bars. And then by selecting the whole container, I can distribute the 2 graphs evenly so that they take up the same amount of space on the dashboard. Let's also give the dashboard a title by bringing in a text object. And let's make it bigger, and maybe let's make it bold as well. Just like in Einstein, the dashboard objects can be resized by dragging their edges. And then let's also add in the company logo by bringing in an image object next to the title. And I'll choose the logo. And I want to fit and center the image. I'll quickly resize this as well. And then I'll name the dashboard Profit Analysis. And I think it would be good to give these graphs some context by adding in some KPIs. And in Tableau, KPIs are created on sheets. So let's add a sheet. And a good KPI could be the sum of profit, for example. So I'm going to bring in the profit and put it on the text shelf. And again, it defaults to sum. And this time, let me change the number format of the actual field. So default properties number format. And I want it to be a currency in units of thousands. And let me put in euro again. And then we can go in and edit our labels. So we want this to say total profit. And maybe let's make it a bit bigger. And can click apply to sort of see what it looks like. And I think that looks pretty good. And then last thing, let's just center it all. And there we go. We have our first KPI. I'll name the sheet. And then let's create 2 more KPIs. So I'm going to right click and duplicate the sheet. And now we're interested in the profit margin. But profit margin is not a field in our data set, so we have to create a calculation for it. So in Tableau, you can very simply create calculations. So we'll call this calculation profit margin. And this will just be the sum of profit, and it sort of autofills it, over the sum of sales. Click OK. And then we can replace the sum of profit on the text shelf with profit margin. And again, let's change the number format of this field. This time it will be a percentage, and let's just keep 1 decimal place. And last thing, we just want to change the label to say profit margin. And there we have our second KPI. I'm going to duplicate the sheet 1 last time. And for our third KPI, to keep things simple, let's just use the total number of orders. So I can just put order ID on the text shelf, and it's going to show us all the order IDs, but that's okay because I'm going to change it from a dimension to a measure, and I want to count distinct the order IDs. So we've had 4,000 orders in total. And again, let's just say that this is orders. Okay, our KPIs are ready. So now going back to our dashboard, I'm going to bring in another container, and then I'm just going to drop all my KPIs in there. And then distribute contents evenly. Let's resize this a bit. And then let's just fit these sheets to entire view and hide the title. And do this for all of them. And now we have 3 KPIs in our dashboard. We are going to add more formatting to this dashboard shortly, but first let's repeat these steps in Einstein. In Einstein, we have here our 3 lenses that we created earlier. And what we're going to do is clip these to the designer. So if I click and I label the query bar, it opens up a blank dashboard for us, which we can rename. And on the right-hand side under queries, we have our bar. Now let's clip the other 2. And Einstein has clipped our other 2 queries to this dashboard as well. Whereas a Tableau dashboard is made up of sheets and objects, a dashboard in Einstein is a collection of widgets which visualize data query results. Widgets, which can be found on the left-hand side, are the building blocks of a dashboard in Einstein, and they snap to the dashboard grid. At the moment, this grid is not very granular, so we're going to increase its granularity by adding more columns. Let's say 20. And I'm not going to change the height of the rows, but one could do that as well if one wanted to. So let's start building out our dashboard. And I'm going to start by dragging a text widget onto the dashboard. And let's edit the text in here. And let's make the text a bit bigger. Next, I'm going to add an image widget, which I'll first shrink, then bring here. And under image scale, I'm going to fit the height and align it to the center. Next, from my queries, I'm going to add the map, and I'll just make it a little bit bigger. And then, like we did in Tableau, I'm going to use a container. And inside the container, I'm going to add my line chart and my bar. And now, before going any further, let me just save the dashboard to my fruit and root groceries app. And now let's add some KPIs. So first of all, I'm going to bring in a container, and I want to place it between the title and the other graphs. In order to do that, we need to press Shift so that all the other dashboard elements sort of move around. And then we'll drop it there. And we select this container and just bring it back down. And actually, let's only make it too high. So now inside this container, we want to add our 3 KPIs. So first of all, we need to create another query. We want to use our fruit and root groceries dataset, and we will name the query KPI 1. And instead of count of rows, we want the sum of profit. And that's all we need to do. It is a bar for now, but that doesn't matter. And then what we're going to do this time is we want to bring in a number widget. And then I'm going to populate that number widget with the query we just created. And because the widget is a number, it doesn't matter that our query looked like a bar, it's still going to populate the widget with a number. So now I'm just going to format this a bit. Let's shorten the number and let's call it total profit. And then under text style, let's make it 18 and 14. And let's align it to the center. And then all we're missing is the euro symbol. So if I click into the query, I'm going to format the number to be a currency. And then I'm going to add euros after. Okay, we now have our first KPI. I'm going to copy this widget and pull it up right next to it. And we can see in our queries that this has created a separate query to our previous one. So we can just click in to edit this query. And this time we want to calculate the profit margin. So instead of choosing one of these options, we're going to add a formula. And then as our formula, we can just write sum of profit over sum of sales. Apply. And actually, let's change the number format to a percent. And we can see here we have our profit margin. And let's just remove one decimal place. Close this and remove the sum of profit column. Again, it doesn't matter that this is not in the format we want it to be. All it matters is that the query behind it is retrieving the sum of profit over the sum of sales. And then let's again format this a bit. So this is the profit margin. And we're going to choose the same sizes again and align everything to the center. Okay, great. So for our last and final KPI, let me again duplicate this and click into it. And now we want the unique. So count distinct in Tableau is unique in Einstein. So the unique of order ID. And this time we don't want euros. And then again, just the text style. And everything's centered. Notice how containers are used slightly differently in Einstein compared to in Tableau. So in Tableau, we had the option to distribute the container contents evenly, whereas in Einstein, I had to manually size the KPIs to all be the same size inside the container. The use of containers is so that the dashboard elements all move together. So if I were to move this here, the 3 KPIs would move together instead of having to move them all separately. And now let's switch back into Tableau for some further dashboard formatting. The last element we're going to add to this dashboard is a table which gives us information about the customers. So in a new sheet, I'm going to bring customer name onto rows. And I also want to split up the table by category and subcategory. And then I'd like to see the quantity, the sales, and the profits that the company made from selling these products to these clients. And because I want to add more than one measure to my table, I can put measure names on columns and then measure values onto text. And Tableau adds in all these different measures. And now I only want to keep quantity, sales, and profit. So let me remove everything else and then just reorder them. And then I can see that I need to change the number format of these. So sales, I want to be in euros. And similarly with profit, I don't want it to be in thousands. Now let's rename the sheet. And then we can go ahead and add it to the dashboard. So let me add the table to the bottom of our dashboard. And now all our dashboard elements are on the dashboard. Let's just clean it up. So the table, I'm going to fit its width, and I'm going to hide the title. And we can also give customer name a bit more room. And then let's just change all these titles to be something a bit more meaningful. So this can be profit by country, profit by category, and then I don't need the field label anymore. And then profit by quarter. And then I'm also going to hide the headers. And then in order to conform to company branding, I'm just going to go to the bars and make them the same blue as the pear in the logo. And same for the line. And in order to conform to the company's branding, it would be nice to also match the font to the one in the company logo. So we can actually in Tableau format the whole workbook, which is a really neat feature. And we can say that we want all fonts to be Bahnschrift light condensed, which is the same font as the company logo, and everything automatically changes. And in a similar fashion, I think the worksheet titles are a tiny bit too big, so let's just make them a bit smaller. Another thing we could do is right-click and format the KPIs to make them stand out a bit more. And I want to give them a sort of like grayish background. And what I can do now is go to the sheet, copy the formatting, and then select the other KPIs and just paste the formatting. And the KPIs now have this nice light gray background. A final touch, which I always like to do, is to increase the spacing between the graphs just to give everything a bit more breathing room. So under layout, the padding now is 4. I usually like to increase this to at least 10. And I'll just do that for all the graphs. All that's left to do is now to make this dashboard interactive. I want the user to be able to click on a country. Actually, let me zoom into that a bit more. So as I said, I'd like the user to be able to click on a country and for it to filter through to the other charts. And similarly, it'd be nice if they could click on a category or even on a quarter and for it to filter the view. So all we need to do is on the graph that we want to act as a filter, we can just click this little use as filter icon. So I'll do that for all of them. And now if I go into full screen view, if we click say on France, it filters the KPIs, the bar, the line, everything to France and the customers in France here at the bottom. And we can click back out of it. We can click on just a category, for example, or we can even say Q3 of 2020. And again, everything gets filtered. Let's now switch back into Einstein and build out this interactive dashboard in there. Let's go ahead and build the table in Einstein. So I'm going to use a table widget. We're going to edit the query and choose table mode. And I'll use a compare table for this. And then like before, I'm going to group my table by customer name, by category, and by subcategory. And then instead of count of rows, we want sum of quantity, and then sum of sales, and sum of profit. And our table is ready. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. And then let's fit the table to the width of the widget. Oh, I forgot to change the number format in the table. So let me just go ahead and do that now quickly. Okay, so now let's give this dashboard a white background, because if I preview the dashboard, you can see that the background is currently gray. So I'll go back into edit mode, and we're going to choose the background color for the grid to be white. And like in Tableau, let's now give the KPIs a gray background. Oh, and I realize now that this should actually be quantity. And then let's make the line and bar chart a dark blue. So under conditional formatting, I'm going to color my sum of profit custom color. And again, I'm sorry it doesn't show it when I paste in my hex codes that I copied. For some reason, it closes the color picking window right away. In the bar, actually, I want to remove my x-axis title. And then if you recall in Tableau, we changed the font. Unfortunately, in Einstein, there isn't a way to do that. And actually, as far as I know, you can't enhance text in any way, so you can't make text italic or bold either. So we're just going to use the default Einstein font. So now let me go ahead and add titles to these graphs. And now let's preview this dashboard. So in Tableau, if you recall, we had to add in filters at this point to add interactivity. But as you can see, if I click on a country, Einstein has already automatically done this for us. And actually, when you click on something and filters the rest of the view, it's called faceting in Einstein. So we can click on anything, but you'll notice that I can even click on a row in the table and it will filter the rest of the view. I think in this context, it doesn't make much sense. So let's go ahead and remove it. I'll go back into edit mode, and I'm going to select my table. And then in my query, I'm going to untick broadcast selection as facets. And this means that basically we don't want to filter other queries based on a selection in the table. If I now go back into full screen mode, and you can see that if now I click on a row in the table, nothing happens, but all the other filters still work. So this is great. We now have two fully functioning dashboards, which can help give insight on how fruit and root groceries makes its profit. We've now completed the demo part of the session, but both Einstein and Tableau offer more dashboard widgets and objects than we had time to cover. On the left-hand side, you can see the widgets available in Einstein, and on the right-hand side are the dashboard objects in Tableau Desktop. In our dashboard, we used a chart widget, a table widget, and a number widget. We also used others, but we will talk about those shortly. In Tableau, there are no equivalent dashboard objects. But as we saw, that is because in Tableau, you can add charts, tables, and numbers by dragging sheets onto the dashboard. Similarly, although we didn't cover them in the session, filter widgets, date widgets, list widgets, range widgets, and toggle widgets can be added to Tableau dashboards through sheets. For the title, we used a text widget in Einstein and a text object in Tableau. We also used the container widget. Tableau distinguishes between horizontal and vertical containers, but that's a minor difference. For the company logo, we used an image widget and an image object. And in Einstein, there's also a link widget, which allows you to link to another lens, dashboard, or even a URL. There's also a navigation widget, which allows you to link to another page within the same dashboard. In Tableau, the navigation object can be used to navigate to another sheet in the workbook, and a URL link can be added to an image object to navigate to a link in a browser. You might be wondering what the web page object does. This is actually a really neat feature that Tableau offers. As you can see in this example, a web page object allows you to embed a web page inside of your dashboard. And as far as I know, Einstein does not offer a similar feature. So that's all the widgets in Einstein covered. So now let's go through the last few dashboard objects in Tableau. The blank allows you to create some blank space on the dashboard. In Einstein, we don't have a blank widget, but that's not necessary because widgets snap to the dashboard grid, and you can leave blank space by leaving empty grids between widgets. The download object allows you to add a button to your dashboard on which the user can click and download the dashboard as a PDF. Such a button is not directly available in Einstein. However, as you can see here, there is a menu item which allows you to print the dashboard to PDF. And finally, Tableau has an extension gallery with extensions created by third-party developers to expand dashboard functionality. So you can browse for an extension and download it, and then after you've downloaded it, you can add it to your dashboard via the extension object. Now that we've compared dashboard widgets and objects, let's have a look at other features, starting with features unique to Tableau. Then we'll talk about those unique to Einstein, and then we will wrap the session up with some features common to both. And again, this is not going to be an exhaustive list. Rather, I'm going to talk about the ones that stood out to me, and please do feel free to add more in the comments. In Tableau, tooltips are very customizable. So for example, here I have a graph showing the profit by year and country. And here I have a map showing total profit. If I want to also see the profit by year, I can add the previous graph to the tooltip. And now when I hover over the countries, I can see the profit by year. Another great feature of Tableau is that it allows you to insert calculated fields inside of texts and titles. So for example, I can write, this year the profit was, and then insert the sum of profit. And the text seamlessly transitions from a text to a number, which changes dynamically based on filters applied to the dashboard. Einstein also has some great features. For example, special chart types like waterfall charts, gauge charts, and funnel charts are easier to create in Einstein. All you need to do is click on the chart you want and then pick the required fields. Tableau is super powerful in that it allows you to make pretty much any chart type you want. However, sometimes this requires a few more steps. So for example, to make a funnel chart in Tableau, you would make two area charts on a dual axis. And for a gauge chart, you might draw a semicircle using sine and cosine functions. Another feature of Einstein is that the same query can be reused for different dashboard elements. So for example, if I populate a numbers widget with my unique of orders query, then I get a KPI, like the one we already have in the dashboard. However, if I now place it inside a chart widget, Einstein creates a bar chart from the same query. Another example is if I place the table in a table widget, I get the same table as I have in the dashboard already. However, if I place that same query inside a chart widget, I get a bar chart. Lastly, another neat feature is that Einstein visually shows you your history of steps so that you can easily scroll back through time and undo changes you've made to a query. As many of you will have realized by now, Tableau Desktop and Einstein Analytics are similar in many different ways. Here are a few more features that will be of interest to those of you creating or viewing dashboards. Both Einstein and Tableau offer dashboard templates. On the left, you can see some examples for Tableau starter dashboards. If you want to use these, you'll have to download them, and I will leave a link in the description box below for where you can find them. And on the right are some dashboard templates for Einstein. Einstein does make it a bit easier than Tableau to use templates, as they are readily available within Einstein Analytics when creating a new dashboard. As we saw earlier, Einstein offers many different chart types to choose from, but so does Tableau. On the top right corner of your Tableau desktop, you will find a Show Me button, where Tableau will suggest the appropriate chart types for the given dimensions and measures currently in the view. And last but not least, both softwares have at the center of their mission the ability to share dashboards and insights with others. From Tableau Desktop, dashboards are published to your company Tableau server, where they are visible to whomever you share them with. And similarly from Einstein, dashboards are published to Salesforce applications, where others can view and interact with them. I really hope this session today gave you a good understanding of how Tableau Desktop and Einstein Analytics are very similar in some ways, but also how they differ. It will be really interesting to see how these two will come closer together and hopefully also gain from each other's strengths. If you enjoyed this webinar, please consider subscribing to our channel for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching and have a great day.